What's up, y'all? It's Celeste. It's been a while. It's been almost a year since my last video, and at the time I posted that, it had been, I think, about 6 months since my previous video. So I'm not really posting very much here, as I'm sure you can tell. In fact, since I posted my last video, I've gotten a few comments from various people that are variations on "Are you still alive?" and things like that. Um, I have my Instagram linked on every video and I post very frequently there, so if you really don't know whether I'm still alive, it's not that hard to find out. But I recognize that not everybody that watches my YouTube channel necessarily is on Instagram or wants to be or wants to follow me there. Totally understand, especially since most of what I post there is like nature photos and stuff. Basically what I'm going to be talking about in this video is how I've been trying to heal from autistic burnout and what some people call unmasking, which it's not my favorite term for a few reasons. One being, I don't actually love the term masking to start with. I think, especially over the last few years, it's gotten confusing because some people talk about masking in one context and they're not talking about autistic masking or neurodivergent masking in general. They're talking about actual physical face masks for infection reduction purposes, and it's just gotten a little bit confusing. Also, I have seen some other people talk about this also, that masking almost makes it sound intentional, and it is for some people, but my experience with masking has not really been that way. It's just been a kind of mostly unconscious, what feels mostly to me like a dilution of myself as opposed to putting on a mask. Like, it's not like I go out and I'm like, I'm gonna be this person that I've created. It's more like I just have suppressed things and I've kind of made myself smaller and put myself below the needs of other people in some ways. And most of that has been, like I said, kind of unconscious, and it's been just kind of a process that's happened over time from feedback I've gotten from when I wasn't doing that. And so it's just like a little bit different from the kind of concept that I think a lot of people have of masking, where you are kind of like realizing like, I'm different, I need to put on a mask so people will accept me. And that's just not how it's been for me. So I haven't really found a better word. I mean, there's camouflaging, but it's not really that different. It's kind of the same concept. So I don't know. Anyway, I am trying to kind of undo that, which is very difficult because since it was unconscious to begin with, it's kind of hard to undo it when you don't know how you did it to start with. And also there are reasons that I did it that have to do with being accepted and sometimes safety, sometimes just an emotional feeling of safety that is not something I can necessarily control, because it's like I have natural like nervous system reactions to things that is my body trying to keep me safe, but it's not necessary in every situation. But it's not something I can just like in the situation be like, hey, nervous system, we're safe now, so just don't do that. Like, it's not really that easy. I'm probably going to be somewhat my usual rambly self in this. I know a lot of people say that they don't mind that, but it's not just like the final product that you guys get to see. It's the process. Like, while I'm talking, it's just very uncomfortable for me because I am struggling to hold on to the thoughts that I'm having, and just the whole process of like taking what's in my head and trying to distill it into actual words and sentences and then put that out there in a way that makes sense. And then while I'm filming it, I start thinking about other stuff, and then like it's hard for me to remember what I've actually already said, and it's just a lot. And it's not just about making videos either. This is a difficulty for me in everyday conversation as well. That's why I don't talk very much in a lot of situations. I just have a really hard time with verbal communication, which is very strange because as a kid I was very, very talkative. But basically, I guess I just talked a lot as a kid and didn't really think about any of these things and didn't really think about whether it would make sense or whether the other person wanted to hear what I was saying. I would just talk, and that was easier in a lot of ways, but it was made very clear to me over the years and decades that not everybody likes that, and I don't want to be annoying. And so it is one of the things that I have kind of suppressed in myself, and it's hard for me to figure out how to get back to some level of like freedom and like feeling relaxed and like authentic without like it being uncomfortable, like I was talking about. So anyway, this is hard, but I'm going to try to do it anyway. I'm not saying that to complain. I'm just trying to explain why YouTube is one of the things that was like one of the first things to go, even before I started consciously trying to heal from burnout. It's just, it had to be one of the first things because I just didn't have the capacity for it. So anyway, that's why I don't make as many videos now. And basically what I have been trying to do since I recognized that I was dealing with autistic burnout, which is pretty much when actually it was before I actually got my official diagnosis. It was more when I was starting to recognize that I was autistic, which was a couple months before that. So it was like a little more than 2 years ago, is when I first started hearing about autistic burnout and was like, wow, this really sounds like me. I think most people are kind of familiar with the concept of burnout as it relates to, say, a job or maybe school or maybe being a caregiver to somebody or things like that. And autistic burnout is pretty much like that, except instead of being from a particular external thing, it's just from like being alive in the world and existing as an autistic person. And that's not to say that being autistic itself is necessarily the problem. It's more just that we live in a world that isn't really amenable to us or our needs, and so it can be very difficult and overwhelming from a sensory standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from the standpoint of trying to relate to people and not being understood or not being accepted, and it just can be a lot. I feel like I've probably had autistic burnout on some level for the last probably couple decades at least, maybe longer. Probably starting when I was a kid, really, but like definitely I would say at least in high school was probably when I started on this kind of cycle where I would kind of be going along and then and things would be kind of seeming to be okay, and then I would get to a point where I would just get very overwhelmed and have a massive crash and basically a nervous breakdown. At the time, it was considered to just be depression, and then like anxiety was added to that later when I was probably in college. But looking back, it basically was burnout because I would just like get to a point where I was overloaded and would just collapse. And the only way through it really was to have like rest and kind of reset myself, and that would happen through basically collapsing and becoming paralyzed and like not being able to do anything and going into basically a depressive episode. But it was like pretty much my nervous system just like shutting me down because I wasn't shutting anything down for it, and so it would just like get to a point where things would just shut down and I would need a couple of weeks to kind of rest. And like I don't know, it's not like I even did that much like intentional healing, but I just would like stop going to class or just like stop doing stuff or whatever, and eventually I would kind of come back and be able to re-enter society, and I would just get into like this cycle with that, and it would just happen over and over again. Definitely happened a lot in college. There were several semesters where I ended up just failing out, or in some cases was able to withdraw from some of my classes or get like a medical withdrawal, but it was a problem. The same thing happened once I started to work, and I had several times where I would be going along and then I would just get overwhelmed and would just like quit my job. And from the outside, it looked like I was just like a brat, or was like, I don't know, like lazy or selfish, or insert any negative word you want here. But it was literally, I just couldn't keep going doing what I was doing. It was not sustainable. And like I said, I would try, and then like my body or my nervous system would just be like, no, we're not doing this anymore. If you're not going to stop, then we are going to stop for you. And that is pretty much what burnout is. Like, it just is everything shutting down, where things just don't work anymore and you can't just keep doing all the stuff you were doing. So this time, once I actually realized that I'm autistic and that it was autistic burnout, I was able to take a little bit of a different tactic with it, which is basically to way slow everything down. And um, I'm very fortunate that I have been able to do this. Not everybody is in a position financially where they can do this. And by no means am I well off financially, but I'm fortunate to have some very generous people in my life who have been helping me financially and allowing me to not push myself as much with work, which I already was like, I had already had several breakdowns with my current job and like I have not been working as much as I was at one time. So I wasn't making very much and I'm still not making very much, but having this extra financial help has really taken some burden off of me and allowed me to focus on myself and my mind and my body and healing myself in a way that just would be very difficult if I didn't have that. So I definitely have prioritized rest a lot more. I think I was already taking pretty regular naps before I even realized I was autistic, but definitely have like made that a pretty normal part of my everyday routine. Most days I take a nap in the morning. I get up very early. I wake up at like 3:30 or 4 usually and get up and work out and do some other things. And then after I eat breakfast, usually I will come back and take a nap at around like 9:30 or 10. Usually only for like half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. But like after I do that, then I can get up and have my lunch and like do other stuff. Obviously it depends, like if I have an appointment that day or like if I'm going somewhere or whatever, it can be different, but I definitely feel a lot better if I get a nap during the day, and I notice a big difference if I don't. Later in the day I start getting not just tired, but it just everything is harder for me, emotionally and mentally, and it's just I very much notice a difference when I get a nap versus when I don't. We are so often taught that what we need is too much, or like we're asking too much, or that we are being selfish, or that we're being lazy, or that we are like, I don't know, like overstepping, or like basically that we don't deserve to have the things that we want or need. And it takes a lot to kind of move past that and like get your mind to really accept that, yes, actually, this is something that I need. It's not just something that I am demanding for no reason or to like take away from somebody else. It's just, I recognize that I am better and my life is better when I take a nap every day. So I'm going to do that. I think that's been one of the biggest things, is just like having a mindset shift of recognizing when something is better for me and works better for me, whether or not it's something that like everybody needs to do is kind of irrelevant. It doesn't matter. And part of that has also involved just experimenting with a lot of stuff, especially early on. When I first started this process, I decided to just try a lot of different things, some of which I wasn't even sure like whether they would be like whether it was like an element for me of my burnout or of my like my autistic traits or whatever. I definitely have always stimmed in different ways, but I feel like I kind of consciously tried to do different kinds of stimming that I hadn't done before, just to kind of try out and see like whether it helped. And also like sought out different sensory things. I was already pretty aware of like things that would overwhelm me as far as sensory stuff, and so like sensory avoidance was kind of a little bit easier because it's pretty obvious when something is distressing to you when you're doing it, or when you hear it or see it or whatever. But it took a little bit more experimentation to start recognizing like, wait, there are actually things that when I seek them out, I feel better. So in addition to stimming, that could be like one thing for me is definitely going outside and feeling different things, like feeling the wind or feeling the sun. To a certain degree, I absolutely hate the heat, so that makes it kind of difficult for me during a lot of the year here where it's very hot. It's harder for me to go outside, which is hard for me because I have found that being outside is very regulating for me in a lot of ways. Being able to see different parts of nature, and even just like going out and seeing um just like looking at little things, like seeing a bug or like a bird or whatever. It's just like these little tiny things that you don't think are going to mean that much, but for me those things have helped so much to just like focus on something little like that, that is enjoyable, that is just like a little, like, I guess I've seen some people call glimmers, which are supposed to be like the opposite of triggers. It's like something that instead of triggering you into feeling bad, it actually like makes you feel good. It makes you feel regulated. And there are a lot of little things like that that I've been trying to lean into. It could be also like a texture, or like just like noticing how something feels, or noticing how something tastes or smells or whatever. I feel like I've just been trying to focus more on those things. I mean, obviously I was like somewhat aware of that before. It's not like I didn't ever experience those things, but really trying to be conscious of like just the littlest things and trying to get pleasure out of whatever I could. I think actually like the process of accepting that little tiny things can mean so much is one of the things that has helped me heal, because in our very fast-paced world, there's like this idea that little things like that are not important and don't have a big impact, but for me they have. And yeah, so just kind of like the overall theme of all of this is kind of tuning back into myself and finding out what I like and what I need, and trying to separate that from what the world says is cool to need or want. And yeah, that's just been like a big part of this. I mean, I think that's kind of something that everybody tries to go through at some point, hopefully, to try to separate themselves from what the world wants from them or like expects from them. I mean, that's definitely a big part of most people's gender journey, if they are gender nonconforming or trans, or even a lot of cis people go through this process of kind of examining their gender. And it in that context I think is a little bit more obvious, but there are so many other ways that we can do that and kind of like just really examine like, what do I want out of life, what brings me joy and pleasure, and yeah, just like makes me feel good and makes me feel regulated, makes me feel like I'm glad to be alive. And that's just been my main focus, is just kind of like finding those things. And unfortunately, like I can't lean into all of those things because some of them are bigger things that are too much for me, or were at the time too much for me to, like, it was just past my capacity to do them. Like there are a lot of hobbies that I've had to set aside and like just kind of put on a shelf and like hope that I can get back to at some point. One of those things was singing, which I've mentioned on here several times that I was taking singing lessons for a few years, and it's been such a difficult process for me, like way, way, way harder than I ever thought it would be. Not just the like technique aspect of it, but emotionally, it's been really one of the most emotionally difficult things that I've ever tried to do in my life. And maybe that sounds dramatic, but like I really didn't realize how many layers of like emotional, I don't know, like baggage or like difficulty I would have relating to my voice, and how hard the process would be, and how frustrating, and how, I don't know, just it feels like or it sort of seems like if you could just understand what you're supposed to do, like you just have to learn what you're supposed to do and then you can do it. But that hasn't been my experience. I have learned so much. Like voice became really like an autistic special interest for me, and so I like devoured like books and videos and learned so much about the voice. I understand it pretty well. I mean, I'm not like a total expert, but I have a pretty good understanding, like theoretically, of how singing is supposed to work and all kinds of different aspects of like the anatomy and like the physics of it and like all kinds of stuff. And that just hasn't necessarily translated into me being actually able to do those things. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but some of them I don't even understand the reasons. But anyway, that's been just so frustrating and such a difficult thing for me to deal with. And voice lessons became really triggering for me. And so I had to kind of set that aside and just like not do any, not just voice lessons, but I stopped even practicing or trying to sing in any particular way. I still would like sing to myself a little bit around the house or whatever, but never tried to sing seriously for quite a while. I have finally gotten back to it since then, but it took me a long time to feel like I was ready to do that. From all the other things that I have been doing to heal in the meantime, I felt like I needed to get to a certain level of healing before I could even attempt singing again. And there's some other things that I also have not entirely stopped doing, but have really kind of like scaled back. I mean, I already was kind of doing that just from like, I just haven't been able to do as many things as I used to, just because I would get so overwhelmed and get frustrated trying to do things like sewing and stuff like that. But I don't know, there's just been a lot of things that I just would not even attempt to do because I knew that it would just be too upsetting and it would be too overwhelming for me. And I tried to just give myself some, like, be more gentle with myself about that and not beat myself up about it, because that was already happening, and making myself feel bad about it wasn't making it any better for sure. And so just part of the process has been just kind of giving myself the space to be like, you know what, I can't handle that right now. That's okay. Maybe one day I'll be able to, but like, even if I can't, like, I need to just give myself the space to like not feel bad about it, which is much easier said than done. Like, it's not like I just could do that once and like it's been easy since then. I also find movement to be extremely helpful for me mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I really need that as a part of my life, like as a part of my regular routine, or else I start to feel very dysregulated. And like, even on a day that I don't work out, like if just like for one day I don't work out, I definitely can feel a difference. Like, I feel more antsy. I feel like something's missing in my day if I'm not working out, which this is very wild to me because I was not like this at all when I was younger. I was extremely sedentary and non-athletic, and never in a million years thought I would grow up to be a fitness person. But it's very regulating for me. It's such an important part of my life. And even though I don't have a lot of energy most of the time, like most of the day I am tired, the morning is when I have the most energy and like the most ability to do stuff, and that's when I work out. So I definitely, like, I already was doing that. I already was working out pretty regularly at home and was running and doing different stuff like that. But in the last year, in the last less than a year, since the fall, I joined a gym. I joined like an actual gym instead of just working out at home, and have really been enjoying that much more than I thought I would. Also in the fall, I started hiking regularly, which I unfortunately have had to stop now because it's gotten too hot here in Florida. But I was able to do it for a long time. I only stopped a few weeks ago, and I didn't expect to be able to do it for that long, but I have been able to, and that was so wonderful for me. I was hiking mainly in this one state park near me, pretty much about weekly. There were a couple weeks where I skipped, or where like the weather wasn't good, and there were a couple of times that I went more than once in a week. So it was like on average about once a week. That's been so healing for me. Like I was talking about before, being in nature and being able to kind of get this like sensory input that's more serene and like not as, I don't know, it's just like the perfect level of sensory input for me, I guess. Like, there's a lot of stuff to look at, so it's like, I'm not understimulated. I'm like perfectly stimulated. It's not overstimulating. Most of the time, like obviously it can be if it's like super hot or if there are bugs like flying at me or whatever, which is how it got to be toward the end there. But for most of the time, the weather was really nice, and it was like the perfect level of things to look at and sounds, and just like everything was just like the right level. And I also was moving at the time, so there was that element. This particular park is also not really crowded during the week most of the time. And I also was able in the last couple months to start going early. I got on like a special list because I'm an annual pass holder for the park, that I was able to go before they actually open. So that really helped me have more alone time, which is really part of what has been helpful for me, because even when I'm here like at my house, I mean, like Jason is here, but even when like I go outside in our yard, I can hear the neighbors, I can hear like lawn equipment and like construction and like cars going by and like people yelling and people playing music. And it's not like always loud here. It's not like I live in like a super loud place, but there's just enough of that it's really irritating to me and hard for me to like go outside and relax. And also just like having all the neighbors around, like I can't just like go out in the yard and like sit there and not feel kind of weird that like people are looking at me. So being out in more of like a natural setting where I'm away from people has been just like a really wonderful escape from other people that I really needed, and that I am definitely missing now that I can't go back there for a while. But yeah, anyway, that's been a big part of my healing, is finding that like perfect level of stimulation and movement and nature and all the things that have been able, like, made me able to just get nourished by things around me without being drained by them. Hiking for me has been just really wonderful in that regard. At the beginning of this year, I was feeling a little bit more capable of doing stuff, so I was able to start doing some creative stuff. Mainly, like I got a little sketch journal and started drawing again, which I hadn't done in a while, and also got some colored pencils and was like doing some coloring. And unfortunately, I've kind of fallen off of that again and haven't been doing that for a few months. I basically was doing it for like a month, maybe two. Really was doing it for like a month at the beginning of the year. And then kind of fell off because I have this like thing that happens over and over, that I will want to do something and then I'll have an area where I'm doing that, and then the area will get cluttered and I just get too overwhelmed with trying to deal with the clutter that I just can't use it anymore. And it's preventing me from doing something that I want to be doing. And so there is like a motivation to clean it up, but the act of cleaning it up is just so overwhelming that I just like, I don't know how to do it. And so I just end up not doing it. And then I end up not doing the thing that I want to be doing. So that's one of the reasons that I don't sew as much as I would like to. It's one of the reasons I don't do puzzles as much as I would like to. And it's one of the reasons now that I don't do as much like artistic stuff as I would like to, because all of those things require you to have a clean surface to work on, and clean surfaces are so difficult for me to keep clean. Like, things end up on them and then I don't know where to put those things, and it's not just a matter of like taking the time to clean it up, it's that those things don't have a place, and there's just not a place for everything that I have in my house. So things just end up getting moved around, like from surface to surface, or just like being put down on a surface because they don't have anywhere to go. And then I don't know what to do with that stuff because there's nowhere else to put it. So that happens a lot to me. And so for that reason, I haven't been doing as much creative stuff, which is unfortunate because I actually was enjoying it a lot and I feel like it was relaxing to me. I did get frustrated when I was trying to draw some, but I think it was going okay. I was trying to be gentle with myself with that too. And definitely with coloring, I feel like that was more relaxing. But I don't know. It's just really hard for me to have things like that I can just like do the thing and not have to do all of the extra support tasks that go around that. Like, I think that's one of the reasons that I didn't have such a difficulty with things like this until I was an adult, because when I was a kid, Like, yeah, I had to clean my room and stuff, but like, I didn't have to do that all by myself. I didn't have to take care of an entire house all by myself and manage all this stuff. And I didn't have this much stuff because I hadn't accumulated stuff for 4 decades. So yeah, it's just like, that is just one of the things that is the biggest struggle for me, is dealing with stuff and dealing with all these things and not knowing what to do with them. And yeah, it's just a lot. And anyway, that was a little tangent, but that's basically one of the reasons why it's been hard for me to do certain things. And I would like to get back to some of those things, but when I think about doing them, then I start thinking about like all the stuff that I have to do to prepare for them, like cleaning up the surface, and then I get overwhelmed. And so then I kind of retreat from it and just like procrastinate it. And while I would like to get to a point where that's not how my life is, that is how it is right now. And so I'm trying to just kind of like, again, be more gentle with myself and just accepting that, well, I can't deal with that right now. So instead, let's try to do something else and try not to feel too bad about it, even though I kind of still do. But there have also been some other like more like treatment kind of things that I've been doing. Not trying to treat being autistic, but treating my depression or anxiety, or like, I don't know, just trying to like reset things in my brain in some way or another. One thing that I did, which I did talk about this very briefly on Instagram, but never really talked about it in detail, was I did TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. And basically what that is they put this like magnet on your skull and it sends electrical impulses to your brain, and it's supposed to kind of reset things and can be very effective for depression. It's actually like extremely effective. I can't remember the percentage, but I think it's something like 70% of people positively respond to it or something like that, for treatment-resistant depression especially. And I unfortunately don't seem to have been in that 70%. It was a pretty major undertaking to do it. I had to go 5 days a week for the first, I think, like, I can't even remember how many weeks, several weeks. Might have been like 6 weeks or something like that. I think the whole thing was like 8 weeks. And there were, I think, like 34 treatments overall. And so it was like 5 days a week for the first however many weeks. And then I think it was like 3 days for a week or two. And then it was like 2 days for the next week or something. I can't remember exactly how it all broke down, but I had to drive to Orlando, which is like at least half an hour away, to do it. So for several weeks, 5 days a week, I was going there for like half the day, like going back and forth. And so it was a pretty major deal. And I was very fortunate that I had it covered by insurance. I still had to pay a pretty decent amount for a copay, but it was much, much lower than it would have been if I hadn't had that coverage. So I figured it was worth a try. At first, when I did it, I thought that maybe it was helping, but I never really had any like major breakthrough from it. And then kind of afterward, like a couple weeks afterward, I actually had kind of like a little crash and like a depressive episode. And I feel like it was kind of probably like I don't think it was caused by the actual treatment, but I think it was kind of like having gone through the treatment and having this hope that it was going to help, and then not feeling that way kind of like triggered me into like feeling depressed about it and feeling like hopeless, because it was like not entirely a last resort treatment, but it was kind of like one of the things that I was hoping was going to be like pretty likely to help, and then it wasn't. So, and it didn't. So that was pretty upsetting at the time, but I kind of ultimately realized that the reasons that I was depressed, like there were actual reasons for me to be depressed, and it wasn't just like some problem with my brain. Like there are actual horrible things happening in the world, and being a trans person and being neurodivergent and queer and just like not I don't know, it's just like kind of a messy world that we live in right now, and feeling the way that I was feeling was actually a pretty natural reaction to that. So the fact that it couldn't be fixed by electromagnetic impulses is not really that surprising. I mean, I do think that it can be helpful for a lot of people. I'm definitely not knocking the treatment. I think it can be great. And I've read accounts and heard accounts from people that it has made it like a massive difference for. And so I definitely, if you have access to that, I definitely would not advise you against trying it. I've done a few different types of therapy also during this time. At the time I had my autism assessment, I was already in therapy. And then I ended up leaving her and just kind of taking a break from therapy for a while. And then I started with somebody new this year. And I mean, I don't know. I haven't really found therapy very helpful, honestly, over the last like many years. I've had it be helpful in the past, but it hasn't really been very helpful for me recently. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't found the right person or the right modality, or maybe there's just something about me that is just not amenable to therapy. But I like my current therapist, but I don't know. I just don't know where it's going at this point, but I'm going to keep at it for now. But I have done some alternative therapies on my own here at home that I'm not going to get into right now, but maybe we'll talk about it at some point in the future. I know that's kind of vague, but I just am not entirely ready to talk about it at this point. It's not entirely legal, so I just don't really want to get into it in a YouTube video. But although it's a little hard to tell because I have been doing all these other things I've been talking about in this video, I do feel like it has helped me as part of my healing journey and has helped me, I don't know, like feel more at ease in myself somehow. All right, I know this video is already getting pretty long, but I just remembered something else that I feel like was really helpful in my healing journey that I hadn't talked about yet, which is video games. I had not played any video games at all for like 6 years, and just kind of stopped for a number of reasons. One is that I was getting a lot of motion sickness from pretty much any video game for a while, and then also just like the amount of time that it took up was hard for me to do other stuff. Like in the past, when I played the most video games was when I was doing like nothing else. I wasn't working, I wasn't really like doing any other hobbies, and I would just like sit and play video games for like hours and hours and hours. And it was like a hyper-focused kind of thing. And I just couldn't like sustain that anymore once I started doing other things in my life. And so it was kind of hard to, like, I wanted to play certain games, but then I would just think about like how much time it would take, and it was just like hard for me to even like want to go start playing a game because I knew that it would be such a time sink if I did that. I wish I were one of those people who could just like casually sit down and play a game for like half an hour and just like get through a game that way, but that's just really hard for me. So anyway, I didn't play anything for a while, but last spring I decided to try playing a game again, and I started playing the Hitman games, which I had already started the first one. This is like the three most recent ones that came out. They're called Hitman 1, 2, and 3, I think. Now it's like all considered one game, and it's like Hitman World of Assassination. But I had played several levels on the first one. They were released episodically, so at the time they were released like I think like a month apart or something. So I played them up to a certain point, and then like I stopped playing games like in between episodic releases. So once they started doing more, I just like didn't keep up with them, and then I didn't play the second or third ones at all. So I had started, but it was like behind, so I actually started over. And it kind of sounds weird to say that a game called Hitman would be like really relaxing, but if you don't know anything about the games, like they're not like, yes, it's kind of violent because you're a hitman in them, but it's not like a big like shoot 'em up game like it can be if you want to play it that way, but you're not going to get very far because you'll get caught and killed if you do it that way. So it actually goes better if you take a long time and like plan everything out and do like a lot of experimentation, and like there's just like a lot of like thought and planning and playing different ways, and you can play the same level over and over again and do it in like all different ways. And I don't know, it's a little hard to describe if you've never played it, but for me it was a really good level of like mental stimulation without being taxing. Like I had to think about what I was doing enough that it would kind of keep me occupied, but it wasn't something that I was like having to make a lot of like major decisions or like, I don't know, like it just was not mentally exhausting. Like at that point, in my burnout, like everything was mentally exhausting. Like making any kind of decision was just so tiring, and just trying to like think about anything was just really difficult, and I just didn't have the energy for that. But playing this game was just like the perfect level of requiring thought in a way that kept me from just like wallowing and ruminating, but wasn't exhausting. So I got really into that for, I don't know, a couple months, I guess. Once I got through those, I kind of like fell off the wagon again, and like haven't really been playing anything since then. But I did want to mention it because I found it to be such a good way to like do something without it being too much for me to handle. Like there was enough of a challenge to it that it felt like I was accomplishing something, and that it felt like I was engaged in something, as opposed to just like if I had just been watching TV the whole time or something like that. There was more to it than that, and it was like something that was kind of stimulating my brain and like helping my brain and my emotional capacity, like, I don't know, like not be just stagnant without overloading them. Other than that, I'm sure there are things that I'm forgetting that I haven't talked about in this video, but this is, like I said, probably very long already, and I guess I can always make another video if I think of something else later. We'll see if I actually do that, but I would like to make videos again more regularly. I pretty frequently have ideas for things that I want to talk about, but then I just never do because the process of filming is just so hard for me, and the process of like getting anything that's in my brain out into a form that anybody could understand is just hard. So we'll see. But I do miss y'all, and I hope that you're doing well and taking care of yourselves and giving yourself some grace and space and kindness and gentleness and compassion, because you deserve it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.